Well, welcome back to another one of our NTS forums. These forums are designed for our students and our friends, and we're exploring new forms of ministry, the new way to do things, the next thing, the new thing. Today, we're very excited to have our guest, Dr. Thomas Jay Oord. Dr. Oord's a theologian, a philosopher, a scholar of multidisciplinary studies, award-winning best author. 12 times he's been recognized as an outstanding award-winning teacher. That's pretty impressive. You've taught at multiple institutions. You're known for your contributions in research in love, in relational theology, open relational theology, science and religion. You're a prolific author, over 25 books, according to your website, maybe more now. And you blog regularly and you send out essays. I love reading them. And most importantly, you are our director of the Center for Open and Relational Theology. So you have your own center and you have the academic center at Northwind Theological Seminary. And we're so excited to have you. So let me just start with a question. What is open and relational theology?
And a lot of people are asking that these days because that phrase, open and relational theology, has really gained momentum in a lot of circles. And I like to say there's two ideas you kind of need to keep in mind. One is the idea that God is interactive, is both giving and receiving. That's the relational side. And to most people, that doesn't sound particularly odd. But then I tell them that most of the major Christian theologians in the history of the church have said that God is not a receiving God. God is impassible, to use the language. So open and relational theology kind of goes back to, yes, God is really interactive in our lives. The second idea is a little more controversial. It says that God and creation are moving through time such that the future is open not only for creation, but also for God, which means that the future hasn't been predetermined or predestined, that we have free decisions amongst possibilities. And even God's not 100% sure how everything is going to turn out. So that's the open side of things. In addition to those ideas, there's usually an emphasis upon love and creaturely freedom and other things. But at its core, that's open and relational theology.
So you've been doing this for a while. What started you down this path?
Well, since probably junior high, I've thought that the ideas or issues of love were the most important in my life. And seeking to make sense of that, not only sort of in human relationships, but also with other creatures and with God, has kind of been a quest behind so much of what I've done academically, personally, recreationally. And in my way of thinking, open and relational theology provides what, at least I think, is the most adequate framework to understand what love is, how it ought to be expressed, how God loves. The issues of love just fit well in this framework. And so that's at the heart. There's lots of other reasons, obviously, but that's at the heart of my own quest to come to embrace this way of thinking.
So if I were to ask you how you developed this, was this an aha moment and it was all clear to you, or has this been something that has been building or revealing itself, or have you been exploring the edges? How are you developing this interest?
Yeah, it's definitely been a long process, adding, tweaking, changing my mind. I think a wise person is open to changing their mind when the evidence or reason suggests that they ought to. And so, yeah, it's been a long process. There have been several kind of key turning points. For instance, the number one reason why people who don't believe in God, atheists, say they don't believe in God, is the problem of evil. If there's a loving and powerful God, why wouldn't this God prevent the unnecessary suffering and pointless pain of the world? And most theologies don't really have a good answer for that. And a turning point in my thought came when thinking that if I understood God's love in light of God's power and thought that God's power was inherently uncontrolling, I could make sense of the tragedies, the abuse, the harm that I see in the world, the disease, all the problems, because I could say God isn't causing them. In fact, God's not even allowing them, as if God could have stopped them, but just says, "Oh, I'm choosing not to." So that was a real turning point in my thinking toward an open and relational theology that understood love as fundamental, even God's love.
So in our working together, I notice you disappear for little blocks of time. Uh, you go camping, great pictures that you're taking.
Oh,
Is
thanks.
that part of this, that you're able to get those moments of solitude or aloneness? I liken it to listening to God in the still quiet of the night, because I've always worked like multiple shifts, my real day job, stuff with the family, and then I would do another shift on a project I was working on, like 2 or 3 in the morning, that quiet time. So for me, it was always that still quiet time of the night where I was listening for God. Where do you find your most inspiring moments as you're exploring this interest?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time outdoors. I live in Idaho, and we have, 2/3 of the state is public land. So there's lots of places to roam, and I get out there by myself. I'm a photographer, an artist, so I make photographs, but I also like to, the physical exercise. There's something about getting away that helps me actually be more productive. There's lots of studies that show that that's the case, that actually taking a break makes you more effective. And so that's the case for me. I get out almost every week for multiple hours. Sometimes, I take week-long treks into the wilderness. It's a good thing for me.
I can tell. But the other thing I really enjoy working with you is that nothing's ever static. There's always a new project you're working on, whether it's a blog, whether it's an essay you're promoting or something. So what are the new projects you're working on that have you most excited?
Well, I'm doing 2 book projects at the moment. In fact, just before this interview, I was recording the audio version of my new book called Open and Relational Theology, an Introduction to Life-Changing Ideas. And this book really does introduce to the average person the basic ideas of open and relational thought. There have been many books written at a more academic or scholarly level. And I thought, I really need to present something that more people could get their heads around. And so that book is to do that. The other book that I'm co-editing with actually one of my students in the doctoral program and a few other people is called Partnering with God. And it has about 100 different essays from
Wow.
pastors, activists, scholars, just your everyday person, teachers, thinking about what it means to have not only a relationship with God, but working with God to make the world a better place, usher in the kingdom of God, establish the reign of love, all kinds of phrases we might use. But this idea that we have a true role to play in the world. And that book should come, actually, both books should come out in the summer of 2021.
So you just mentioned one of your students, the program that you designed, and you are the primary faculty for as a 36 credit hour degree, somewhere between a traditional Doctor of Ministry degree and a PhD. More research oriented, although there is some projects in place, but certainly at a higher academic level than the traditional Doctor of Ministry. We kind of designed the DTM on the Durham University, UK model of a professional doctorate, above that just practice of ministry piece. So in all of that framework, how do you teach open relational theology to the students in your program?
Yeah, the beauty of this program is that each student works one-on-one with me. It's a fully online thing. Obviously, that's what Northwind does, is online education. This is fully online, and it follows what we in the academy call the Oxford style, which means that I work with each individual, look at what they've done in the past, the books they've read, the experiences they've had, etc., and look at the kind of topics that really, get them excited, and then craft a syllabus by syllabus for each course related to their past and where they want to go. And that means having a number of books to read in any particular course. And then I work with them discussing the ideas, answering questions, criticizing, what scholars do, arguing, going through the minutia, that sort of thing, on the way towards some project, usually a dissertation that is in an area of study they find interesting related to this general field of open and relational theology. And that takes a variety of forms, as you've just mentioned. Some are more practical. One woman right now is at the beginning stage of her doctoral program, and she wants to put together a curricula that presents open and relational theology to theological education in the local church. So that's kind of more along the lines of a practical application. Another one of my students is comparing the philosophy of a person named Rene Girard with open and relational thought. That's much more theoretical and kind of what we typically think is more like a PhD. So these different kinds of approaches all fall within this doctorate of theology and ministry.
What is the reaction to students? I mean, so many of us have gone through education that was much more structured and was kind of lecture, drill, if not test, then paper. Kind of proving that you had paid attention to the reading and paid attention to the instructor. How do they relate to this Oxford style of teaching?
Well, they love it because they don't have to go and redo something they've already done. They get to pursue the topics they really care about. And this is, what do you call that? A staggered start, a rolling entry. That is, we can start each course based on their own schedule. And if they want to take a month off in the summer to vacation with their family, we can do that. It's also the case that even though I'm working one-on-one with each person, every month we have a voluntary group meeting in which we come together and share our ideas, and we bring in a leading light in the field of open and relational theology. In the past few months, we've had John Sanders, Catherine Keller, John Cobb, Randy Woodley, Pamela King, and I could cite many others. Ryan Mullins also was in that stretch. Anyway, these are really cutting edge speakers who come on Zoom and spend an hour with us going deep on the topics that people care about. So I like to say this program is tailor-made to each person, and I get to work with them personally. And the cherry on top is that it's less expensive than a lot of other doctoral programs.
Well, and both in the format that you're describing and the tuition that we have, and part of it is that we're able to do this as a virtual institution. We have access to the Digital Theological Library, which is an ATS accredited library. We have research librarians. We've all taught in ATS and regionally accredited institutions, the senior faculty, the core faculty. And what we've developed is this pedagogy or teaching style of guided education, where we're guiding students as they're learning in that kind of a hybrid Oxford model. And you're right, the rolling admissions means that a student can start when they're ready. They don't have to wait for a semester to begin. They can graduate as soon as they're done. Not everybody works on that academic schedule, especially if they're in ministry. I wish that had been available to me. And the ability to kind of do this at their own pace, 30 to 90 days is kind of our model there. And it gives an awful lot of control for the student, especially those engaged in ministry, in being able to kind of plan out their academic workload and their ministry workload and their family responsibilities. It's really a unique new way to do this. You're doing something new this summer. You have an exciting conference planned.
Yeah, we're having an open relational theology conference in Wyoming, right at the edge of Teton National Park and within an hour's drive of Yellowstone National Park. We're coming together, not only students in the program, but folks who are not in the program, maybe potential students or just people interested in open and relational thought, and we're going to spend a week at a resort in the mountains, hanging out in nature, hanging out with each other, and having lots of time to explore the world.
That sounds exciting. How many people do you have signed up right now?
Right now we have 35 adults, and we're expecting, this is the registration's open for another month and a half, so we expect to have more than that. We think that's a really good number given
It is.
that we're just coming out of a pandemic. So we plan to do this in the future.
Well, it's been an exciting year here at Northwind as well. We really had some modest numbers. If you went onto our website and looked at our futuring plan, we thought we'd have 30 or so students by the end of our first year. And we just celebrated admitting our 100th student. And that's pretty exciting stuff. And about 25% of them are in your program. So it's wonderful to work with you. I hope you're finding it fun to work with us in this kind of distributed learning. An academic dean in San Diego, associate dean in New Jersey, registrar in Oklahoma, you in Idaho, me in Florida. We have faculty literally around the world. We had a faculty Zoom meeting, and we had 6 different countries represented in that faculty Zoom meeting. So we really are bringing the best that theology has to offer with this new look on how to be offering the next thing, the new reformation of the church. Yes, I said that word correctly. And the new thing that's happening in ministry. And it's a joy to be working with you in this project, Tom.
I enjoy working with you. It's so easy to sell this program to potential students because they get to study what they care about. They don't have to repeat things they've already done. It isn't a system that requires them to, have specific class time with people in a cohort. It's so much less expensive than most doctoral programs. So many seminaries today are going to an online format, but they retain all the bills that come from managing a building and property that we don't retain. That's why we can offer it so much less expensively than many others can. And of course, we get to work with good people like you.
Having been a regionally accredited college president, I can assure you laying awake at night trying to figure out how to pay all those bills in private higher ed is an interesting challenge. And that's where most of this gray hair came from, but I haven't been getting a lot more since doing this. And I'm glad you mentioned cohorts. When I was at Drew Theological School and doing admissions and institutional advancement, and then teaching in the Doctor of Ministry program, even when I was president at Bacone, cohorts were our biggest problem. We always had 1 or 2 people, either due to health, ministry, or family, that missed one course. What we described it as they fell out of their cohort. And how do you get them back in? Some of the cohorts had courses that met every year and just delayed them a year. Some were unique and didn't repeat every year. And then how do you get them to finish? And that's something that students entering your program or any of the programs at Northwind don't have to worry about staying with a cohort. They don't have to worry about their tuition increasing for the entire time they're in the degree, as long as they're making academic progress. So there's a lot of things we put in place to kind of protect the student as they're going through their degree. And we also waive the application fee, so we make it easy to apply. Your program does require a review, but I notice your turnaround is very quick. We don't keep students waiting months at a time, wondering if they're going to be able to start. We really have been able to service our students very well.
You're saying that reminds me of something I think we ought to mention to folks watching this who might be potential students. A number of students come to Northwind with a partially completed master's degree because they've been the victim of that cohort system, or something else has come up and they've not been able to complete their degree. And the beautiful thing about Northwind is we provide opportunities to finish up that master's program with some classes and then go directly into the doctorate. So if you're watching this and you're one of those people who start and didn't quite finish your master's program, you're welcome at Northwind. There's a way to bring you up to speed.
In fact, they can go right to the homepage. We just redesigned that whole section. The expressway to ministry is the graduate degree completion program, partnering with Northwind Institute and Northwind Seminary to get those credits in place. We can grant up to 12 credits in the 30-credit degree in previous coursework or some limited experience, and then do a capstone of 2 research courses and a paper, or a research course, project, and paper as part of a capstone experience. So it is a really accelerated way to get into your program or one of the other doctoral programs at North.
Right. I was just last night reading the final project from a master's student named Britt, and she hit the ball out of the park with her master's thesis. And now she's working on her doctorate with me. It's just a great way to get up and running.
Yeah, it was a nice partnership. I got to serve as her faculty mentor. She finished her master's, and always with an eye on how did we make what was happening in that degree applicable to what she would be doing in your degree. The real reason that she was at Northwind. So that's kind of fun. Tom, this has been delightful and enjoyable. I know you're open. If students or others who are watching this have some questions, they can contact you through our website. I'm certainly willing to do that again. And once again, thank you for your leadership in the Center for Open and Relational Theology.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. You're a great president. I appreciate you.
Appreciate it.